Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, and your Colonial Champion, Sean McCourt. Welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, to another edition of the Court-Martail Podcast. This time, it is the second of our two-part series on the state of professional wrestling in 2025. As WrestleMania 41 edges ever nearer, so do we continually edge our way to enjoyment in the professional wrestling business. But that doesn't mean that everybody who once had their edge still has their edge. But we here never break stride. We never change lanes. We never turn to down another road. We stay down that path and bury it if we have to. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, here today as we are set to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we often do here, as far as what WWE's bringing to the table, AEW, and a number of external factors. But we're doing different things from what we did last week, because Josh Ageddon has some knowledge of what the exterior world is, but we need a man who has got a broader world view. Not that Josh Ageddon doesn't, but when it comes to the sports world, he will, to his own admission, say it's not his cup of tea, it's not his bailiwick. He might just get off the highway altogether. But this man, he knows where the sports go. He knows and can smell the influence of the professional wrestling world in a mainstream culture, and he can give us the broad paintbrush perspective, like a beautiful Picasso that you can completely make sense of. The man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour. He is the Bay Area Brawler himself, Skylar Greenberg. How you doing, buddy? Coming into an entrance like MVP right now.
I'm coming. Nobody can stop me. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me, because at the end of the day, we keep our edge, and unlike some people, we don't cope.
That's right. No, we deal with our problems in a more healthy way by just getting them out on a podcast. And that's seemed to work for us, Skylar, for the past 5 years or so. So,
and then when we don't, we go to therapy afterwards because our therapists need help. And then those therapists listen to our problems and realize they need a therapist. And then they go to their therapist and then they...
Yeah. And then those therapists quit, and then the whole thing is thrown off, and we end up in the shindig that we're in right now. But we've got a lot to talk about, Skylar, and we're going to do this kind of in a different direction. Now, you asked us before the show to start kind of in the opposite direction as we did with Josh Ageddon, and I actually am going to take that advice, because why don't we get through the dreck so that we could pull ourselves up and reach to the top before we're rocked bottomed back down. So, are you enjoying my bad puns so far? Your silence is deafening,
I don't know.
Skylar.
Am I enjoying your bad puns, or am I just here in the stink of them?
That's right. Well, while you are taking the fan to waft that stench somewhere else, roll the window down if you have to. Let's talk about AEW.
Well, here's the thing. Before we get started, I have not listened to the full show that you guys did, but I knew you guys talked about WWE first and spent a good amount of time trying to avoid talking about Tony Khan with any type of, I don't know.
We did.
We're going straight into it.
Yeah, well, we might as well charge headfirst into it, because unlike them, if we charge headfirst, there is a good chance we will see the wall directly in front of us and be able to stop and pivot in a different direction and not smash straight into it in a way that AEW has been able to. Now, we obviously know about the spike spot with Jon Moxley and what they've done, and Josh Ageddon cut a pretty scathing promo on Adam Copeland, and I cut a pretty similar one on Jon Moxley. But what it aggravates, because you and I, if anyone who are new listeners to the program, our distaste for AEW has been well documented, has it not, Skylar?
I don't know. It seems like we have an entire catalog of episodes that people should listen to. Not. Let's be clear.
Not now.
Listen to this one first, then go back and watch it.
That's
You
right.
can watch all of our previous stuff. But we have talked so much about AEW that we all care more to less not. But yes, we have.
Well, and Skylar, here's an interesting question for you. Because the face of AEW seems to change very rapidly to where even from year to year, they look like a completely different company, even though it's headlined and the through line is sadly the incompetence of the booking of Tony Khan. But how do you think that the diversity of AEW has helped it or hurt it, considering the turnaround that there is in that company, as well as the controversies that seemingly do more to hurt the wrestlers, but also the signings that they have? A cross-section of AEW never looks the same in 6 months' time.
Well, let's be clear about something, okay? When we're talking diversity, are we talking the wrestlers, the fans, or both?
Well, describe an AEW fan for us. Like, well, what are they compared to, like, a WWE fan? That's a great question. Break that down.
Okay, because here's the problem with that question is because the wrestlers in the ring are fans who are wrestling, and the fans who are on the outside want to get into the ring, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, it's certainly.
There is no separation between the wrestlers and the fans. Anybody that is on the other side of the guardrail could get into the ring when it comes to AEW if you're willing to do all the stupid stunts and all the garbage bullshit. And that's the problem that AEW is nowadays. They have enabled people who are at their worst, have no knowledge of professional wrestling, and at their even worse, have some knowledge and choose to continue to do the things that they do in spite of better voices telling them, no, you should not do this, or no, you should not do that. How many times, especially in early AEW, did we hear veterans like William Regal try and offer advice to people, and people just said, no, screw you, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it?
Arn Anderson had the same complaint. In fact, it's wild how many veterans who started with that company who have now left have all had that exact same statement. There's got to be something to that. These kids have refused to listen because they've always believed they knew what was best, and they've got the ultimate enabler at their helm in Dave Meltzer.
Exactly. This is the thing, is that the people right now who are the biggest fans of AEW are the people who are subscribers to the Observer letter, and specifically for Dave Meltzer, because he is the biggest sycophant of them all. He is the biggest kind of like archetype of what the AEW fan is. A person who is male, particularly of the Caucasian build, who likes to see moves.
I like the way you phrase that, the Caucasian build, like you're in a character select screen at the beginning of the game. Oh yeah, I went with the white build. Okay. No, so
but am I
it's
not
just
wrong?
funny the way
Am
you
I not
phrased it.
wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're 100% not wrong. It was just funny the way you phrased it. Go ahead, Scott.
But that's kind of the thing, is that you have all these male white guys. And the thing is that when you look at the AEW crowd, I see some women. I hardly see, I see a couple of Latino. I hardly see any African American besides the here spray or every once in a while. It's just a bunch of dudes. And specifically, it's just a bunch of white dudes who are spread out, who look like neckbeards. Or the other thing, too, that I've also heard is that they give away so many tickets that the people that are there, they're not there excited whatsoever for the product. They're just there because they got free tickets.
Well, and that's half of the problem. I mean, every week, it's amazing how the ratings are in this weird fluctuation right now, but I mean, consistently dropping. That hasn't changed. They are just consistently dropping and dropping, no matter what high-name talent they bring in or who used to be high-name talent that come in here. It doesn't really matter for them anymore. I mean, Edge used to be a draw, but based on all the dumb shit he's done, trying to make up for lost time, people just don't care anymore. You know, Kenny Omega, I mean, say what you want about Kenny Omega, but he had some better drawing power than this. And, you know, they still have too many titles, but the crowd is dead for most of everything on that show. It's got a bad aesthetic. Every time I try to watch it, like when I'm in a hotel, like whacking off or something, And, you know, because that's what they're doing, so why not that be what I'm doing?
Okay, a little too much personal information there, buddy.
That's okay. Well, listen, I don't go to hotels very often, so this is a very rare occurrence. But the point is that it seems like AEW finds ways to fall on their own face, but Tony doesn't care because his pockets are so bottomless that it seems to me like the most loyal AEW fans are starting to recognize that it doesn't really matter to Tony to get better or not, because so long as he's got television, he's fine. And he's happy.
No. You've hit this. You've hit the idea, but you've not hit the whole thing. It's not about the television. It's about the money that his dad has and whether or not he's allowed access to it or not.
Which he currently is, and it currently hasn't mattered to good old Shad. But neither has...
And that's the problem with AEW, is that they have an endless supply of money. If they were an actual company that didn't have a nepotism baby with all the ability in the world to spend as much money as he wants on his company, they would have been shut down years ago because they were an unprofitable company. If they had a budget... Listen, Dixie Carter is one of the worst owners in professional wrestling, and even she had to stop at some point because her family couldn't support her no more. But the reason why Tony Khan is able to continue is that she has so much more money than Dixie.
Well, that and the increasingly decreasing standards of Warner Discovery, who traded the NBA for AEW, which is still an absurd statement to say.
Well, let's be clear. They didn't trade away AEW for the NBA. They lost the NBA because they couldn't pony up the money for it, realized they need to put something in there, and decided that AEW was what they were going to replace the NBA with.
And you'd think that with that more emphasis of primetime that would boost their ratings at all, and it hasn't. You'd think that they would have an increase by going to Showtime or HBO's Max or whatever it is. And while they say that 500,000 people have watched, I am not convinced that they have gained that many people based on Max.
The thing about WWE and what makes it so good in a way is that it's a publicly traded company, so we know pretty much what it's making and what it's doing. It has to talk about what they do. AEW being private means that we're kind of stuck because we don't know how much they're making. But from the sources that we hear from inferences, they've never been a profitable company.
Well, but they've never had to be. And that's what I think there's... It's interesting now listening to podcasters talk about AEW, like Cornette and Brian, they're almost defeated in a way that they're like, it's a non-profit organization, so it's kind of like the let's all laugh at TNA joke of yesteryear. But the difference is it's all let's all laugh at AEW, and it ultimately ends up being convenient for WWE because WWE can then say, when they talk about AEW, it's like, oh, we're not, they're such high class now, WWE, especially because they're pricing people out of tickets, but that's a different story altogether. But they're the knight in shining armor, and then they could go, oh, and that's the other group. And it really has allowed WWE to probably gain a lot more leverage in their business dealings, having AEW there to suck as a comparison. But Tony, I don't think
it's not necessarily that. It's that we have to remember how this all started. And if I'm allowed to get on the soapbox for a second.
Please do. That's why you're here.
Let us not forget that the reason why AEW exists is because 2017, 2018, 2019, WWE was the absolute worst
drizzling shits
you could imagine.
It was bad. It was very bad.
The drizzling shits, as you called it, Sean.
Yeah.
And the reason why it was so bad was because we were at the basic behest of a eccentric billionaire.
The man who drizzled shit. Yes.
We were at the eccentric needs of a billionaire and a show that was made for one, regardless of whether the fans cared for it or not. And what happened is that over time, the shows kept getting worse and worse and worse. Yes, there were occasionally things that were good in the middle that kind of like helped along the way, as it happened in the mid and early teens of WWE. But as it kept going and going and going, the show kept going worse and worse and worse to the point where the people said, enough is enough. I don't want to watch WWE anymore. I don't care. Everybody had that moment that they were kind of broken by something and said, you know what? That's it for me.
Yeah.
One of the ones early that I heard was Seth Rollins versus The Fiend in Hell in a Cell.
Well, if you recall, Skylar, it went way back in the day, back in the era of a very old group chat with the fine folks over at the Magnation and our good friend Josh Ageddon, when John Cena beat Kevin Owens and made Kevin Owens tap out at Elimination Chamber, our good buddy had a bit of a freak out. And that was not the first time. There was frustration across the board. I remember leaving WWE based on the Michael Cole heel turn. And I like Michael Cole. Now, Michael Cole has done a hell of a lot to redeem himself, even though he is still a weenie, but now he's a more natural weenie. So I'm cool with it. But
and the thing about all this stuff is that we realize now it's not the wrestler's fault for the most part.
It was for the most part.
It was not the wrestler's fault for the most part. It wasn't the announcer's fault for the most part. It was the fact that Vince McMahon had to self-control everything. And it was at that point they were like, we want an alternative. We need an alternative. So the independent wrestling scene decided, let's do a show and let's show that there can be an alternative. And let's see if we can crowdfund the show, which is what happened with Chicago All In, I think it was, right?
Yes. Yes, the very first.
With many of the, which was a lot of the prototypical, like the prototype AEW show, which was mostly independent scene, and one wrestling match that was actually kind of good, which was Cody Rhodes versus Nick Aldis.
Yes, which I thought was pretty decent. And, I will say this. I enjoyed the Kenny Omega and Penta match as well, even though it ultimately ended with yet another Chris Jericho unmasking, but that match still was solid in my eyes at the time. And then, what was it? Christopher Daniels and Stephen Amell had a good match, too? And then there was, the flip side of that was Joey Ryan and the Dick Druids. So it had its moments. But as you said, Sky, that did become the prototype, but it was spawned, as you said also, of just that general disenfranchisement. What they've been talking about in the Cody Rhodes and John Cena feud that's been going on right now, and the promos that they've been having, that really was the ultimate crux of what AEW grew out of. And to be fair, when AEW started, we all wanted to be able to get behind it, because we were also feeling that level of disenfranchisement, especially after WrestleMania 38, when we were just like, scorched earth this whole damn thing.
And the thing, too, with AEW is that it offered alternatives that we liked when we heard it. Equal pay for the wrestlers, no matter what level they are. Opportunities for the women. Opportunities for the tag team division. What else was offered? Somebody else who was not Vince McMahon in charge, but allowing the wrestlers to also have their say, because we felt like the wrestlers could be great if only they had their voices heard. And we had this guy, Tony Khan, who looked young, who looked good. He seemed like a decent guy, and he looked like somebody who knew what he was doing, and he was about to be the financial backer, but he wasn't going to be the one that was making all the decisions, because it was going to be a group effort with the wrestlers along with him.
Which I'm sure is what every first-time promoter wants to believe. The different, Tony having the unlimited capital for that to basically be the case at first, until I don't know whether Tony realizes it, or I don't know if he realizes it yet, considering how many people have gotten ridiculous deals on Tony Khan's dollar. And by the way, let's just also put on the line right now, neither of us are saying that Tony Khan is a bad person, right? Like, it's not that he isn't like a good guy. It's just that he doesn't have the capability of, he's not as good as he thinks he is, but that's because he was one of those message board marks. He was in that same group as the early days of the internet and the Dave Meltzers and the Vince Russos and that kind of clan that lived on the internet and fantasy booked in their basements. Now, obviously, we're not trying to throw stones about fantasy booking, although the WWE has taken a number of both of our ideas, so we're just going to leave that and just move right on from that.
But is it really stealing our ideas, or is it common sense? Like, anybody that would normally do something or book about something would do what WWE has done.
Yes, and I guess that was kind of, ultimately that was our point though, wasn't it, Skylar? That it wasn't hard to do it. That it was just basic angles and fitting context to people and being able to get them over. And we've, obviously, I hope people have not interpreted that as to be completely the vanity of us when we say they've been stealing our ideas. Like, obviously, like, we know that this is like, these are general angles. It's just funny how they've used some of the same people in very similar ways, you know, although I am convinced that somebody is listening, but that's a different story.
Right, and they can send their checks over to Connecticut and California whenever they want to.
That's right.
But
we're waiting. We're waiting.
Right, but the thing that I think people need to remember is that the early AEW roster and the early AEW storylines, while the quality of them can be like variety, good or bad, they were still different. And that was what we wanted from WWE, is we wanted different. We wanted new, fresh ideas and new things that would happen. And then something happened to AEW that was both great and terrible. And what happened was that some people from WWE left and came to AEW. And some of those people ended up being really, really good in ways that we could not imagine. And also terrible in ways that we could not imagine.
Yeah,
they get a fresh off of TV Dean Ambrose, now going by his indie name Jon Moxley. And you look at 2019 Jon Moxley, 2020 Jon Moxley, completely different dude.
Different build altogether. And it's amazing how he was kind of the trendsetter for, let me take all of the build and the mass and the discipline of WWE and just not do it and still be on TV. Adam Cole fell victim to this. A lot of guys fell victim to that, where they just didn't want to keep up with all their shit, and Tony Khan would not, would allow it, because it was all about the freedom that people were going to have, and that was the difficulty there. And it turned out that some people just shouldn't be able to have their own ideas put on, not everyone needs to have all their stuff put on television. And
but the thing about the other day is that that's what the fans wanted at that time.
Right.
And we didn't know this at the time, but that people like Dean Ambrose have been shot down for ideas, especially the whole thing with Brock Lesnar and that Mania match. And people were like on Jon Moxley's side, like, hey, Brock Lesnar's an asshole. And we found out about that literally too. But the point is that Jon Moxley should have the chance to explore his ideas. We didn't know how bad they would be until years later, but that's beside the point. But then as more talent cycled into AEW, things started to change, and I think AEW hit its peak, quote unquote, when CM Punk came in.
Yes. And it's interesting because you have to group Cody Rhodes into the group of people who were actually kind of hurting themselves with the stuff they were doing. Now, that being said, a lot of Cody's stuff was some of the best stuff on the program. But at the same point, a lot of stuff that Cody was doing was very self-indulgent and not conducive to the rest of the program. And probably for good reason, because he felt like he had to have some layer of detachment from some of the dreck that was coming out of the constant, the first several tag matches with the Bucks and them just doing everything under the sun. And, all of that stuff. And it just, but all that being said, Punk comes in, they've got a homegrown talent in MJF, but then they can't.
But let me continue, Sean, because we have guys like CM Punk and MJF and Bryan Danielson, and you have Cody Rhodes hanging around, and you have FTR who are running the tag team division, and this was kind of the peak of AEW in that they were the anti-WWE, and they had the biggest anti-WWE guy that there possibly could be, because nobody else hated Vince McMahon and Triple H and WWE more than CM Punk, and he was proud to carry the banner against Vince and WWE.
And not to mention that CM Punk basically lived free in the minds of the WWE for 10 years because of the amount of times that his name got chanted. Every time something Vince did or booked was horrendously stupid, you would hear CM Punk chants. He's the only guy who really got one over on Vince, which is why he probably resented it so damn much. And that's what made Punk going to AEW such a game changer to them. But of course, because the way that the EVPs, who were the ones who were put in charge of this, went, and also because of what we would soon learn about Tony's leadership skills or lack thereof, CM Punk still believed that that wrestling company was a for-profit wrestling company. He would soon learn that that's not the case.
Well, it wasn't just CM Punk, because Cody Rhodes at some point realized that the company was not for him.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's ever going to say it, because I think he's too nice, and also he's just a little too politically, smart. But man, to make Cody Rhodes, who was one of the founders, leave, and while there's no heat between him and the other founders, there's something off between that relationship. I don't know if it's ever going to recover.
Well, I'm sure that to some degree, knowing the way that the Bucks reacted, and I don't know if I really want to group Kenny Omega into this. I kind of feel like I don't know just how much of that was in his court, but definitely the Young Bucks and Cody. I'm sure that the Bucks were getting jealous at how self-indulgent some of the stuff that Cody was doing, and I'm sure that Cody, to some degree, was not liking the fact that the AEW fans were rejecting the insincerity. But also, Cody was a wrestler, and the rest were gymnasts, and Cody didn't really match the rest, and he wasn't really willing to say, well, he was willing to do stupid stuff, but not like Mimosa Mayhem match stupid. Set his back on fire stupid, but not Mimosa Mayhem stupid.
But I think what it was with Cody in particular, and you look at it, is that Cody Rhodes is a person who wanted to have a wrestling show and book a show that was professionally done. He's the one that is credited with doing the early, production stuff, and doing the early camera work stuff, and doing the early, writing stuff. And then when Tony Khan took charge, listened to the Bucks, Omega, and also Page, and started implementing more of the indie-style
Adam
wrestling
Page,
booking.
by the way, not Saraya. Hangman Adam Page. Just to clarify.
Right.
Go ahead.
But once he started listening to that side of the elites, Cody Rhodes realized that he was never going to be able to really have his stamp on the show. And more importantly, because he did a storyline where he said he would lose the world title shots ever again if he lost, how can you go back on that?
Well, there would have to be some sort of egregious offense that would call Cody into action to fight against that. But the difficulty is, I don't think Tony's plans were ever to give the belt to Cody. I don't think that was part of the plan. I think that it was ultimately always supposed to be Kenny's belt. Even if Jericho had it for a little while, I don't know why. I mean, Adam Page they wanted to push early because he showed potential early, but the difficulty with AEW is that while I started with us talking about the diversity of AEW, the biggest hindrance in AEW is its stagnance. Because it's the same shit over and over and over again. And it's just repurposed and repackaged. And it's the difficulty is that the people who've been there for the entire time are the exact same as they were when they started. Except Chris Jericho, who's been a bajillion different things to try and overcompensate for all of that. But Orange Cassidy...
Because we credited Chris Jericho so many times with reinventing himself, and that went to his head to the point where now I have to reinvent myself in order to be good. And each time he reinvents himself, the ideas get less and less good.
Well, Chris Jericho became just a gimmick factory to the point where Chris Jericho himself is now just a gimmick, right? And it's kind of sad, actually. But I will say, Josh again did make a good point about Chris Jericho when he was ranting about Edge, saying that at least not that it was good, but at least in Jericho's mind, he thought he was helping all those people that were in his group. And I do believe that to be the case, even though Chris Jericho is always thinking about number one, who is Chris Jericho, as I fully believe that the man who benefited the most from the whole brawl-out situation, and the man who maybe didn't want Punk there the most was Chris.
Well, the thing for Chris Jericho is that he realized early on that he was going to be kind of like one of the 1A or 1B stars because of his name power. And he wanted to fit in with these people because he wanted to be in the spotlight. So he had to appeal to their ideas.
Yeah, well...
Also making it about himself and all the other bullshit.
Well, and to some degree, you can't even blame him because you see how all of the people who tried to bring them to Chris Jericho's level were treated. So Chris Jericho probably by necessity felt like, hey, man, I don't think I have a choice but to do their stuff and to get into that. But let's wrap this up with kind of Bo, because there's been so much that has threatened to take them off the air. But here they are with another TV deal to last a long time. Where do you see AEW being in the next 5 years? And what do you think its influence is going to be on not only the Jacksonville Jaguars, but how the Kahn family has handled their sports franchises as a whole?
Well, I think the thing that people have yet to talk about when it comes to AEW is their plans. That do they have any plans, or are they just going to continue doing what they've been doing to, as has been noted, a dwindling audience? It's the problem again is that because Tony Khan has all the money, he can do this indefinitely. He can do this as long as he wants to.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part. And kind of where I'm going to finish with my storytelling of how after AEW lost CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, how it just continues going down and down and spiraling out of control. And now the EVPs are gone. It's Tony running the show. This is all Tony Khan. None of the EVPs have any say in what he's doing. In fact, right now we're recording as AEW Dynasty is happening, which I don't think you were even aware of that, right?
Totally forgot. You know what's funny? I listened to Cornette Talk preview Dynasty the other day. I saw the card, and still it escaped my memory that it was happening today, like at this moment. It's just a shame too, because like I do feel bad for some of the talent, but not all of the talent. Like for instance, Skyler, I gotta tell you, man, you did more honor to Edge than Edge ever could to himself. Josh again said a lot of what I was thinking about Adam Copeland, but you see where he is now and how much he is actually, I don't want to say set AEW back, but continued the constant of AEW.
No. He is doing the thing that happened in TNA. He's an ex-WWE talent who has come in, used his name power, and used his experience in the business to better himself, brother Jack Dude.
Wow, you both compared him to Hogan. Well, he did win tag belts with Hogan. So I guess it's not that out of the realm of possibility. That is a match that actually happened. Edge and Hulk Hogan beat Billy and Chuck to win tag belts in 2002. That is a thing that happened.
That's the thing, is that Edge and Chris Jericho right now are battling out to see which one is the Canadian Hulk Hogan, and right now I have to give it to Edge. In his time in AEW, who has he lost to?
He got choked out by Moxley. I think that's it. I think that's it.
No, one more.
Christian?
Yes. He lost to his best friend, and then he lost to the biggest star, but only after they had another match that had a DQ where Christian put himself in to make it a triple threat and eat the pin.
Because neither of them wanted to do the job.
Because Christian realized that Edge and John Moxley didn't want to do the job on a pay-per-view match, so they made it a three-way with the Money in the Bank that they have. That's not Money in the Bank, but it is Money in the Bank.
But, it's so depressing, though, to consider that they had that standoff, and the end result of that was, I'm going to choke you out anyway. So all of that grandstanding didn't even fucking work. So,
and the other thing too is that like with AEW and Christian and Edge, they have maybe one of the last great AEW moments with Christian telling Edge to go fuck himself.
yeah. And
they get one-upped by Cody Rhodes and The Rock.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about The Rock plenty in just a little bit. So buckle your seatbelts.
Like the AEW's best moments get stolen by WWE to make a bigger story even bigger than it already was.
Well, and now AEW or WWE is just basically teabagging AEW with these angles and all of these subtle references they're making. They're literally doing victory laps around AEW, and they don't even realize it. It's
No. I think AEW realizes it. It's too on the nose. You can't tell me CM Punk walking past Drew McIntyre who's on a car windshield.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. I loved that. And I wish
CM Punk saying he's tired and he works with children.
Yeah, it's the more things change, the more they stay the same. I still work with children. And
that's the thing, though, is that AEW is exactly what CM Punk is. It's a bunch of children who are playing wrestling. They're cosplaying. This is an episode of South Park, that wrestling episode where they tried to be wrestlers.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And Tony, everything's fine for him. And so long as Warner Discovery's going to keep taking that sweet, sweet Tony Khan money, nothing's going to change. And
that's the other thing, too, is that we've only talked about the single male wrestlers. We didn't even get a chance to talk about their shit show shambles of a tag team division or anything involving the women's division, which, my God, you would need a whole separate episode just to recap everything that's wrong with AEW's women's division.
Or Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor.
Half a pulse.
We didn't even mention Mercedes Moné because of how much other shit is going on. And she's like the fifth worst thing, but still really, really terrible because she's another WWE person who... You know what her gimmick is right now, Mercedes?
Stand and dance.
No, she's doing the belt collector gimmick.
Oh, great. I'm really excited.
She's doing the thing that Kenny Omega did a couple of years ago and taking every other indie company's women's division title.
Good for her. I think it's just kind of sad to me because it's like A, it's not even that unique an angle, and B, nobody cares about all these indie belts. Like AEW has enough of their own belts to contend with, and now they're still in a position where like half of the belts, they've got like 12 matches on this Dynasty card, and like what, 8 of them are for titles?
Well, here's the thing. They're doing the Owen Hart tournament, which my God.
The corpse of Owen Hart has got to be so
Bandito
jostled.
for Bandito's mask.
Yeah, and sadly, I feel like that's going to be one of the better matches.
But like, besides the pre-show match, every match on the show is either for a championship or is involved in a tournament.
Well, and that's the way that Tony likes it. And they're going to be long matches. It's going to go well into the night, long after we're done recording. And you know, and to the AEW fans out there, I want you to know, if you like it, go have fun. Go enjoy AEW. Go enjoy Will Ospreay's ridiculous matches that have an absurd ending. But it's just, the finishes are getting worse and worse with Tony as well. And that's another big part of the problem. And they've got who they've got now, as far as fans are concerned. And if treading water is what AEW wants to do, then they're happy to tread water. But it's any sort of...
Don't pretend that you are a serious wrestling company. Don't pretend that you are anything of a challenge to WWE. Do not pretend that you are a wrestling company who values the professional wrestler and the business, because you aren't. And if you attempt to try and pretend to that, you prove yourself a hypocrite to everything that you stood for 6 years ago.
Yeah, well, and I don't think Tony's necessarily going to say contrary to that at this point, because he's just like, everything is great. We're doing wonderful things. Although, what was it that he said? What did he call WWE? The Harvey Weinstein? Or whatever that he said when he was doing at the draft last year. It's like the dude is just an absolute. He doesn't have any sort of media presence either, which makes it even absolutely worse. But everybody's making fun of him. Everybody, the Jags are a disaster on that basis. Although, admittedly, I'm a little sore about the Jags given the whole Liam Cohen situation. Bucs fans know what I'm talking about. But
hey, real quickly, sorry about my dad.
What?
You didn't hear my dad in the background?
No, I didn't.
Oh, then you're lucky.
Okay, well, we're paternal disturbances aside. It's a. But what did he say? What did Tony say about WWE in the draft last year? I can't remember what it was. He called somebody Harvey Weinstein. Did he say? Would just say the WWE was the Harvey Weinstein of sports? Or something like that.
Yeah, and they were the Coke or whatever.
Yeah, it was just, embarrassing, And that's the thing. It's absolutely embarrassing wrestling, and that's the way that Tony has made it, and that's the way that Tony likes it. And sadly, I don't know what it's going to take to change
Tony
that.
Khan compared AEW to Pepsi, and he called WWE Harvey Weinstein.
Right, which is not even. You can't even call that apples to oranges. That's apples to gasoline. Like, not even a food. It's I don't know.
Again, you could say you are the Pepsi and they are the RC Cola if you wanted to make that comparison. It's the wrong comparison, but you can make that comparison. But to call WWE after they purged Vince, I mean, I guess Bruce is still there, but I don't know if he does anything like that.
I genuinely think that Bruce is too much of a stooge to do anything of that nature. It's like, he's so much of a stooge that he doesn't matter who's in power. He will stooge for that person in power. So, but anyway, this Bruce Pritchard Knox aside, I guess that brings us to the WWE. Now, I want to talk about a few specific things with the WWE now that we've covered AEW. And the first is, when you're in a quote-unquote promotional war or you're trying to make a company kind of hurt, the first thing you do is take over the talent. And we've seen WWE scoop up talent after talent after talent. But what do you make of what they're doing with this WWEID and also with their Let's LFG program where they're actually like training people on camera?
Well, again, the whole thing, and we talked a little bit about it, is the whole sports part of WWE and that they're trying to build a prospect system to where they get talent. They have NXT already and they have the Performance Center, but they kind of realize that while that's all great, they can only have so many people there and there are so many avenues for doing things. So the idea with the WWE ID program is, hey, we can't scout everybody, but what we can do is that we can hire the local schools to train people, and we can send people to the local schools to train first. And then once they are trained, then they can come to us when they are ready. And we'll also help promote and maybe work with companies that we want to work with in order to build out a system. I mean, you can't tell me that that's eventually what's going to happen with both Evolve and TNA.
Well, I think they're already starting to do that with Evolve in a lot of cases. Who was it that I just saw that was that made her debut? Oh, the referee, Jessica Carr, just wrestled in Evolve. Although her name was different, which I think is kind of silly because if you're already better known as a referee and then you go by a ring name, that's just odd. But in any case, but I think that's what they're starting to develop that into. When this whole ID program, I akined it when I was talking to Josh again to like the franchise tag. Where we don't want to pay you necessarily money to come and actually be a part of the program, but we've got our eye on you. We want to see how you do. And if in like a year's time you show some promise, maybe we'll give you real wrestling money. But if not, then we'll just kind of let you go free and do, look for your pursuits elsewhere.
I kind of look at it as the same way as like MLB NHL, NBA. NFL's a little different because they go directly through colleges, which is this whole other thing.
Right.
But those programs, and what they do is that they pay for local places to put on the sport, and they pay local people to look for talent and develop that talent. And eventually, if they like the talent, they'll sign them. It's all part of building up a prospect system of development and getting new wrestlers into the business in more ways than you can expect, and going down the sports route because it's easier to go that way than it is to go the entertainer route, because you can take an athlete and train them to be have a personality rather than taking a personality and training them to be an athlete.
Well, it depends on the situation, though. I mean, I mean, yes, we say a lot about that, but like Jey Uso right now is more of a personality than he is. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not athletic. He is totally athletic, but it depends. It depends on the person, because Gunther was not necessarily an athlete when he started, but he was a personality, and look where he is now, both.
Well, Gunther is completely different because he's a wrestler, and that's a whole other conversation that we can have at some point. The example I would like to say is the early development of someone like Bianca Belair. You take a person who was an all-state athlete at her college. She was a fitness model. She was also, I think, what was it, track and field, high jumper. And they took this person and said, wow, what a physical specimen. Let's train her how to wrestle. And early Bianca Belair is rough.
Yeah,
it's really, really rough.
Yeah,
but over the years, as she got stronger, as she got faster, and she got more experienced, she became what she is today, which is one of the most physically dominant, but also entertaining personalities in WWE when she's not acting like a horror movie actress.
Right. And
that's the approach that this is going to do, is that they're going to go to the colleges, they're going to go to the schools, they're going to find the best athletes, they're going to sign them to developmental deals and pay them money, and they're going to send them to the best schools and build out a development system that would make anybody else eat their hearts out.
Well, but it also does WWE a lot of good in the sense that they will now have their system be like almost unilaterally injected into even independent scene stuff, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the WWE format thing. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to milk as prolifically long as WWE does, but there's going to be more good habits than bad habits, I think, thrown into the mix. And it's interesting, too, AEW being able to have so many layers of cringe moments, I think, has really dissuaded a lot of indie people from indulging in those kind of extreme behaviors in a lot of ways, which is why WWEID had an opening to begin with to even be able to be permeable into the independent wrestling, where it would be abjectly and wholesale rejected 10 years ago.
Well, the reason why it would be rejected 10 years ago is because Vince McMahon did not want to acknowledge anything that was not WWE.
Right.
It's another Triple H chain that has come under his administration, is acknowledging that other wrestling companies exist and they happen and they are worth something to somebody.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we were talking about this with Josh again, but just the launch of the WCW YouTube channel and the WWE Vault YouTube channel and the bangers they've been giving out for ad revenue on YouTube, which is paying very well, I'm sure, considering how many hits that the actual angles are hitting now. Everything John Cena does gets at least 2-3 million. Everything Punk does gets at least 1 million and change. You know, and that's not including all the matchups that they've just given away and the live shows they've done for free. Well, quote unquote free, but ad revenue. It's genius work because it's also reeling a lot of jaded fans who would have looked for an alternative back into the fold by giving the tape library a little more flexibility than Vince ever wanted to.
And most importantly, maybe enticing people who have never seen wrestling before to get into the sport. How do you get people in? Accessibility. Put stuff on social media. Make it interesting. Do things that people who are online and streaming can do.
Well, and I think a lot of that has really been the impact of the sale to Endeavor and how seriously, what do you think of Endeavor's run so far with the company and how seriously they seem to take wrestling as far as its presentation and how that's benefited WWE as a whole.
I mean, let's not forget that the sister company is UFC, and UFC has its own thing. But what separates the two is that WWE and Triple H, I think he's a better businessman than Dana White, in all honesty.
He's got some years to prove that, but I think he's definitely on the right track for sure.
But I think in particular what helps with having it be Endeavor and not just a WWE thing is that now it's not just the whole thing of we are the leader in sports entertainment. We are the leader in sports in general, with the idea being that we will be the ones that will be kind of basically going over and saying, hey, we are the best. There's nobody better than us in any type of avenue when it comes to sports.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, you still have to give Vince the credit for making WWE the name in wrestling, but you really, I think you're going to have to credit Triple H for cementing it. You know, and that's a really powerful statement to make. You know, and considering all of the fences that and the bridges that he's been able to mend as a result of a lot of the earlier things that, you know, alienations that Vince has done. I mean, a lot of people, even when Vince was around, Triple H was the one who started opening the doors for that. And look at what's happened now. I mean, we've gotten a John Cena heel turn. Punk came back to a ridiculous amount of media attention. You know, it's the way that Triple H has restructured not only just the way that everybody is treated and proper stars again, but also has repaired the relationship with the fans. We talked about the fans of AEW. Talk about the fans of WWE now in an arena.
I mean, I went to that Raw show a couple months ago, and it was loud, it was energetic, it was excited. They were happy to be at this show.
And
that's going to continue the more and more that they go and do shows like this.
Yeah. And it's a much more diverse crowd. I see a lot more women and good-looking ones on top of that go to a lot of the shows that I've been to, even just the live events in like Bridgeport here in Connecticut that they've done. It's a more diverse crowd. It's a wider audience. And it's, you know, when WWE for years said, like, we cater to a much larger audience than the marks, but they assumed that the marks were just loud and few, and then they ultimately became an overwhelming majority considering how much the ratings went down. But it's more of a hodgepodge of a wrestling community than what AEW is. AEW feels like it's made by diehards for diehards, which is how this program started.
No. AEW, Tony Khan said it best. He books for the sickos.
Yes, the sickos and the basement dwellers. And the real basement dwellers, not the ones who are doing well and have a job who just happen to be in their mother's basement because financially times are tough on everybody. I'm talking about the real, I'm not moving from my easy chair, I pee in a bucket basement dwellers who are, I'm sure, no doubt toggling between this and Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. But in any event,
you're talking about the people who do nothing but play video games all day, trade cryptocurrency stock,
yes,
and who are basically involved in nothing interesting outside of their dwellings.
World of Warcraft, still playing World of Warcraft type of people, yes. And
again, I'm not saying like those people are bad. Like no. You can be at home. Like I'm a natural introvert. It's just that you have to evolve past the point where things are happening, and you have to have interest in things besides whatever it is that you're doing, and acknowledge that other things exist, which, I don't know, AEW fans, they kind of feel like, again, not to make this about AEW, but the difference is so stark in contrast to WWE, who, when I went to that show, it lined up around the block and stuff, but it looked like normal, regular people.
Yeah.
Lots of kids.
Yeah.
I don't see kids going to AEW shows, but I see all the time at WWE shows, all the kids and all the families that are going to the shows.
Except for that one girl who told Chris Jericho to fuck himself. And that's the image of AEW right there. That's your image of your fan base. That's what you're promoting. That's the kind of kid that you have watching that show. And I'm just saying. But in any case, let's get out of AEW. We don't need to spend any more time on them, because the next question I have here, and this is, I wanted to talk about it here more specifically here than I did in AEW, because I don't even consider what they have for a women's division as one, really, because it's just a complete dumpster. But something that has been beginning to rehab in WWE and has been taken more seriously in recent years, and I want to know what your take is on what you think the future has in store for it, considering the people involved and where it seems like it's heading. But the women's division in WWE, let's talk about women's wrestling in WWE. Where it's at, who the big players are, and where do you see women's wrestling going?
Well, women's wrestling is in a weird place in WWE. I don't think it's bad. Let's be clear. I don't think it's bad. It's in a weird place because we're kind of in time of transition. You have the old names like Bayley, Charlotte, and Becky, who were, again, the horsewomen, but they were the trendsetters for what WWE's women's division was going to become. And they were the ones that were kind of at the forefront of what WWE's women's division is now, which is women who are just as talented physically, promo, and otherwise as the men are on occasion, and have proven that they have the ability to main event over some of the guys' programs when they have the right storyline or they have the right match or whatever.
Right.
And we're in an interesting point now where I say we're in transition because it's very clear there's the old generation, which is still around, which is the horsewomen, and Natalya for the time she shows up at the Royal Rumble and otherwise.
Wait, what otherwise? It's literally just for that. And then she spends a whole year, and then she comes back for the Rumble. That's all we get of Natalya now. And that's not a knock. I love Natalya, great to see her. But, like, do we ever see her wrestle at any other time?
No, we don't.
No, we do not.
But we have that. We have the current generation of women's wrestlers, which is some of the best women's wrestlers that have ever been produced. Again, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan.
Hey, I didn't want to give her credit, but she's earned it. As a personality, she's earned it. Her matches are still fine, better and better, actually. But she as a personality has come into her own. She's been on the roster for 7 years. She was, 23 when she started? She's 30 now. She's taken a long time to bloom, but she's done it. To her credit, she's done it.
Right, and again, other people like Io Sky. And then you can see the future as it's coming up with Tiffany Stratton. Even though she is the women's champion right now, she has room to grow long as her career does not get buried by Charlotte.
Although Charlotte tried on SmackDown after that whole debacle, which was awful. Just fucking awful.
We went from that match being a match that none of us want to watch to now I just want to watch out of curiosity to see how bad it's going to be.
I don't even know what to feel about that. It depends on the structure of the shows, honestly.
I feel like that has the potential to be like a train wreck so bad you have to see it.
That might be a Jimmy and Jey Uso level bad match. I won't lie to you. It should be interesting. But
then you have like the future again, like Tiffany Stratton, Roxanne Perez, and the NXT Women's Division, which is, oh boy, that NXT Women's Division that has potential.
Yeah, Stephanie Vacker has got a lot of promise. Julia has got a lot of promise.
They have Jordan Grace, who we all love.
Yeah, who's awesome, and the thing is that it's really starting to look to me like they're getting wrestlers, but they're really starting to develop true personalities again. They're letting people blossom again. And the freedom that AEW first initially purported, that WWE would not give them under Vince, Triple H is giving them. And it is empowering these people to really come out of their shell and show a side of them that may very well be marketable down the road?
They have a lot of potential for a lot of very interesting wrestlers, provided that they continue to develop. Like, we saw, like, for example, I think it was, Lash Legend and Kalani Jordan at the Rumble. Like, didn't look great, but they're still mid-20s people, so, like, they have time to develop as wrestlers.
Kalani Jordan looked pretty good. Lash Legend, I was like, But you know what? I could be proven wrong. The fact that Liv Morgan saying what we're saying about Liv Morgan means that everybody has time to develop.
And more importantly, they have women's wrestlers that, as they are building up, are showing potential to do things that, again, I don't know if they're going to be as good as the men, but they're going to have women that can fill out a division and fill out a roster. It's just they need more time, and they're going to get more time because WWE is going to continue to put shows out. The one concern I have about the entire WWE roster right now, as I look at it, they have a lot of championships.
They do. They do.
They have too many championships.
Yeah. And it's a problem that's plaguing wrestling in general, because it's like, me want shiny thing, but like, there used to be a level of prestige when there weren't 7 billion secondary belts. I don't think that the women needed secondary belts, personally. You know, Chelsea Green, to her credit, she's making it work for her, but I don't feel like they were necessary.
But I get why they're doing it, because they want belts that they can use to put on TV for title defenses and also the live event shows. Like, I get it. They're trying to put more accolades on people to give them opportunities and stuff like that. I get it. But, man, they just have too many titles.
And it makes the divisions kind of weaker because of it. I mean, look at what the tag division is now. It's got talent.
Men or women?
Yes. It's got talent, but it doesn't have marketable talent, really. It's like heavily marketable talent. And also, people just don't give a flying fuck about tag team wrestling anymore. Vince sadly killed it. He killed its market value, and it really is sad to me. Because
and the question is, could WWE ever fix that?
Well, right now, I don't see them having an incentive to. Because they've got too many singles guys that are over to really make having any investment in a tag division worth it. Which is really sad in my eyes. Because how much I love tag team wrestling. And, you know, I thought, you know, we saw it at the Rumble, where that 2 out of 3 falls match was starting to go somewhere, and then it just died. You know, and to me, there's a lot of there are some great things that Triple H is doing as far as rehabbing the relationship with the fan, creating a more diverse set of fan, creating real stars again. But there are also parts of this administration that they have very, very clearly chosen a focus and priority set. Now, I'm not necessarily knocking them for that, but did we need to split the belts to kind of get back to your point? No, we didn't. And now we're probably still going to end up with some sort of multi-man tag match wedged into one of these Mania shows.
That is true, but the other thing I think people are also going to have to remember, and this is something that we have preached before, is that Triple H is not perfect. He is human. And ultimately, while he's trying to do his best to book the shows, he's booking the shows for people, not just us. Which means that it's going to take time. It's going to take time to do it. And people need to remember, and this is the part that I know people hate, but they keep forgetting, is you have to have patience. It took generations for Vince McMahon to destroy professional wrestling, and that's why it's going to take generations to fix all the damage. And maybe some of it can't be fixed, like the tag team division. But Triple H has earned enough of our faith and enough of our trust that he can fix certain things that he's been able to do. We have legitimate stars again. Shows are going to be exciting. We have people who are having fun.
It's there's so many people having fun. We've had this whole string of international shows and people going so batshit crazy, people can't even do promos because they're like losing their minds on those shows. And it kind of leads me to my next point. It's like, the difficulty here is that you said something really important, that they're broadcasting to people and it's not just us, more or less. And that brings me to the Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia next year, and where these shows and where WWE's marketing are heading. Do you think that their focus on the American market is going to dwindle in the coming years based on the rehabilitation that is necessary because of what's happened with Vince McMahon over the last 40 some odd years?
Well,
or are they going to be just sold to the highest bidder?
Let me put it to you again. Is not the first word in WWE world?
Yes, it sure is.
And under Vince McMahon, I think they forgot that word existed because they only brought it to the American market. People need to remember that this is a world company, and wrestling fans around the world want to watch it. Am I saying that every show should be international? No. Am I saying every show should be American? No. I'm saying that they should be doing equal amounts of both. Because we got way too much American to the point where it oversaturated the American market and we had crowds that did not care.
Well, and we also, the same thing with WWE's. I feel like they dipped their toes in the water a little bit, like when they had WWE UK, when they had that whole scene and they brought people in for like the Cruiserweight tournament and who were luchadors. And, they've had obviously some feelers across the road, but never anything so deeply concretely rooted as in we're going to actually actively tour and put actual televised productions on in these shows, because Vince would do European tours all the time, but they wouldn't be TV. Occasionally there'd be a Raw in Manchester, occasionally, but they wouldn't do what they just did, where they go through
was the one place. It was like WWE US and sometimes London.
Yeah. And now they did Spain and France and Germany and Italy, and they're just going, they did a big Euro trip, and the crowds, they got more and more rabid every single night, most of the time for just them standing around and talking a little bit. And
it's because of the fact that, again, WWE never went to these places. This is brand new markets, brand new people to bring into the fold.
And it's really allowed the tone of the shows to feel much better as well. When you watch a WWE show, even if you don't know what's going on, you can go, wow, the crowd's really into this.
And again, not to make it about AEW, but I think we should. When's the last time you said that about their shows?
Well, we already talked about the contrast of how that crowd is dead because they're giving away tickets that don't want to be there. There are people lining up around the building to get into WWE right now. They're selling tickets hand over fist, although they're starting to overprice the market a little bit as far as like the package that Vegas was and what they're going in. They have still not sold out yet. But here's
the other thing too, is that like look at AEW's international shows. Yes, they've been successful at Wembley, duh. But like look at the show that they just did in Australia and how much of a failure that was.
They had to downgrade it to a collision taping. From a major stadium show to a taping of a B show.
Meanwhile, we just got the announcement that WWE is going back to Australia, and I think specifically back to Perth for another show.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Because they did the Elimination Chamber last year, and they have 40 or 50,000 people in that show. And people at the time were saying, well, they didn't sell out the building. Well, AEW sold out a building of only 10,000 people. And nobody was super happy with that show because it wasn't a good show.
That show was headlined, that Elimination Chamber was headlined by Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax. And it got 50,000 people in the building, just for what it's worth.
Well, that's just because Rhea Ripley is one of the biggest stars in wrestling.
Well, yeah, I'm not knocking Rhea Ripley's drawing capability when I say that. but it's like, you gotta know your audience. And what they put on that show was conducive to that audience. AEW's head so far in the sand that they couldn't even predict their own audience in the building, inside the locker room, except for Tony Khan. But in any case, it's the culture of WWE and the atmosphere is just so much different. It's so much better. But I will say it's kind of heartbreaking, because I called this episode kind of a roided up news of the week, and I want to actually put it in now because we're talking a bit about WrestleMania. I want to preview it a little bit. But there's still people who are convinced this is an angle. I really don't think it is. And if it is, then shame on me for bringing it up as if it's a serious occurrence. But I want to talk about Kevin Owens for a minute, because he gave a very heartfelt promo, at least what it looked like to me, about needing neck surgery because, you know, he's been taking very safe bumps over the past 3 months, Skylar. And
he has.
And now he needs neck surgery, and he's had to bow out of the match with Orton, and he is now, we don't know when he's going to be back. I heard a really grim prediction of 2 to 5 years, which I'm hoping is not the case, and that he'll be able to find a way to recover a little more quickly than that. But, you know, Kevin Owens has been at the top of both administrations in value, and he doesn't really fit the archetype of that guy as far as a physical stature, but Kevin Owens means something really important to the heartbeat of WWE in modern times, I think.
I think Kevin Owens was one of the first Triple H guys who Triple H was successfully able to get over when Vince was still in charge. And there's been a big appreciation for it, but also just that Kevin Owens, despite his look, despite his wrestling style, despite everything, has been one of the most entertaining people in WWE in the past 10 years. And it's not even close.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, not everything that he's done has been amazing, you know, and he's been the victim of a lot of bullshit when it comes to his booking, and i.e., losing to Goldberg in 28 seconds, or being completely overshadowed by Chris Jericho and The List during his entire Universal title run, which I'm sure that we are all kind of happy that the Universal title is no longer a thing.
But he was one of the only good things about the Universal title when it was still existing.
It's true.
Now, if you can allow me to bring in the information that I have for News of the Week to talk about Kevin Owens' injury.
Please do.
He did an interview with Barstool Sports on April 4th, and he talked about when it happened. He said that in January, he had a match where he had 2 really weird jarrings in his neck. He didn't think anything of it until later on when he started noticing like issues trying to do matches, and specifically losing mobility in his libs. There are 2 matches that he had in January. One against Rey Mysterio and one against Jimmy Uso. Now, I'm not blaming either of those guys, because we both know, especially with Rey, he's one of the best workers ever. But I bet you anything, it was one of those spots. And I remember the Rey Mysterio match where I think they were on the outside, and I think KO took a bad bump. I think that's where it happened.
Huh.
Which sucks, because Kevin Owens was on maybe a Wrestler of the Year type run with his feud with Cody Rhodes and what looks like a feud of the year candidate with Randy Orton.
Yeah, I was so ready for that matchup. And Kevin Owens, in just what he's been able to do, how important he was to the Bloodline storyline, and how amazing he was, the best part of WrestleMania 39, him and Sammy winning the belts from the Usos in one of the few times the tag belts have really felt important in the Triple H administration. But that moment was huge. That moment was incredibly huge in the story of the Bloodline, the arc as a whole. He's been an important voice in it, and even just what he did from the heel turn on, from Bad Blood on, and the feud that he had with Cody in what I would say was probably the best feud of Cody's reign up to this point. I don't think that's much, the comparisons. I mean, his thing with AJ was like a cup of coffee, but everything that Kevin Owens did had meaning, had truth, and had purpose. And even though his match with Sammy was very self-indulgent, you still wanted to see what was going on with Randy. He's the only person that they allowed to have a pile driver. This man was the guy who was trusted to have a match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. As much as we hated that WrestleMania, Kevin Owens was the guy that they had do that.
And they allowed him to use the pile driver, which again is another reason why Vince McMahon is long and dead, even though he's still alive.
No, the reason that's so funny, Skylar, is that Josh again said the exact same thing last week. And that's so funny.
I mean, again, I did listen to the show. I didn't realize until right now that I said the exact same thing the exact same way.
Oh, that was great. He's rolling over. I think Josh again phrased it as he's rolling over in his grave that he's not even in yet. And here you are saying Vince is dead, even though he's not. So it's like, it's true, though. You're both right. You're both right.
And that's the thing, is that this is a different company that treats its workers differently and does things differently. Are they going to fuck up still? Yes, because we're all human. But even Triple H, as much as he loves wrestling, do you want to know what happened at the show in Germany and what he did?
Please.
He left because he wanted to go back home and check in with his daughter, who was going to college.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon would never do that. He would never leave a wrestling show just so he can check in on his kids to make sure they're having a good time at college.
Yeah, because if he did that, Shane McMahon would not have given us the greatest WrestleMania quad tear of all time. Which is still a hilarious moment, folks. We talked about this last week, too. We heard about Shane's trauma in that Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. So,
to anybody that doesn't know, Vince McMahon was the most horrible, horrible things they've ever heard. And to people who know the wrestling business and who have been fans of WWE are like, no, that sounds about right. No, yeah, he did that.
Yeah, it doesn't faze most of us. But in any case, the constant throughout both of those eras has been, in large part, Kevin Owens. So our hearts really do go out to you, Kevin. You've meant a lot to me in the past 10 years or so as one of the few bright spots in when sometimes it has just been utter dog shit from that company. Kevin Owens has consistently not been. And I've critiqued a lot of what Kevin Owens has been as far as his weight and all that kind of stuff and his look and the shorts. He put in so much work to be the person that he is now. And it's heart-wrenching to see and to hear that he's going to miss this Mania and miss some serious time off. So speedy recovery. And I hope this isn't the last we see of Kevin Owens. I really do.
Agreed. He's too good of a person to retire right now, and we want to see him continue his career. Just stop doing the career-defining injury matches like you did with Cody and Sammy, because it's too much.
Well, and speaking of he had that Hart jacket, and I guess speaking of, that's a good way to transition into the next piece. We talked about the Hall of Fame on last week's show with Josh again, but I want to talk to you specifically about the latest ad that they've done, which is inducting Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, the match, into the Hall of Fame. What do you think about matches going into the Hall of Fame and this specific choice to be the first one?
Given that UFC was inducting fights into their Hall of Fame, it doesn't surprise me that WWE is doing the same. It also allows them to save a slot because they were starting to run out of individuals or tag teams they can put in to the Hall of Fame.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but they were kind of running out of people that they wanted to or they could negotiate with in time to do that.
or are still alive, to be honest, because most of the people that they would want to probably induct are dead right now. But,
well, and Austin's already going to be in Vegas, so you might as well, you know. So,
but I think for any match that you should induct into the Hall of Fame, Austin and Bret Hart is one of them, because it is one of the biggest matches in Austin's career at that point that made him who he was going to be.
Yeah, you know, every time I go back and watch that match, it's one of the best matches that WWE maybe has ever had. It's good old-fashioned wrestling. It's got an incredible angle in it in the double turn. It's got wonderful person, you know, the people involved are just so goddamn good. Bret is a wizard in this match. And Austin holds up his end of the deal, and so does Shamrock. I mean, it's one of the quintessential matches that doesn't involve anybody who they have a political kind of shakiness with, right? Like, they can't bring in Hogan Andre now after the whole thing that happened with Hogan at the beginning of the year. You know, they'll come back to that when they can, but it's one of the best matches they could choose. It's one of the probably the safest politically they could choose, but it's definitely a turned page for the Hall of Fame in an era that is definitely more nepotism heavy. Well, it's not more nepotism heavy. It's the same level of nepotism heavy. It's just a different person involved. But I'm happy that Bret and Austin are getting in for Bret a third time.
Well, when you induct a fight or a match into a Hall of Fame, it's not necessarily about the individuals, but more so like benchmarking that this is like, if you're going to watch wrestling, this is one of the first matches that you should start watching, is what it basically says.
Yeah, and it is a historic moment in wrestling in general for what it was, and the best matchup of that show, for sure, bar none. Although there were some good ones on that WrestleMania, but that one for sure was the best. But we were talking about...
There is one thing I do want to talk about before we get going.
Oh, well, are we here? Is it time? Because I was going to just about transition right into it. Because as we've talked about the whole build with WrestleMania and things like that, and we've talked about the constants, but we've also have to talk about the X factors, the ones who come in and ruin plans and make it all about them. And while Kevin Owens has been the ultimate team player, we also have to talk about the people who are doing their best to ruin the goodwill that Triple H has built up with the fans. And it's from somebody who claims to be a part of them, but is maybe revealed to be more insincere than Cody Rhodes was in AEW. And Skyler, I am going to leave the rest to you.
For those who don't know, we're talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And all of the shit that Dwayne has done, I was against Dwayne Johnson coming back and trying to take the title for himself against Randy Orton. And while it worked out in the end, and The Rock basically stepped aside to let Cody Rhodes have his moment and finish his story, I was still suspicious.
Against Roman Reigns. You said Randy Orton. But you meant Roman Reigns.
Sorry, I got my moments mixed up.
It's okay.
But the thing is that I knew even then that he was still trying to make it about him, because it's all about me when it comes to Dwayne. And the problem I have is that people were ready to forgive Dwayne for moving aside and letting Cody Rhodes finish his story, but not me, because I knew if it wasn't now, it'd be at some point. He was going to do something to make it about him again. And Sean and Joshua, I'm going to be honest, you two, you were kind of like, it'll be fine. We can trust The Rock. It doesn't matter. Cody won the belt. Who cares? You two were not particularly upset by his cameo at Bad Blood, but I was.
Well, I was more I assumed it was going to go somewhere. I think what I actually said at the time was, if this doesn't go anywhere, then it was absolutely pointless and Punk and Drew should have main evented. But if it's going to lead to something, you know, that had to do with War Games, then I'm in for it. But it didn't, which you accurately predicted that it wouldn't.
Because why would The Rock be involved in War Games as a match?
No, and he wouldn't, and he doesn't. He just has to come and remind everybody that he's number one, you know, and that's... And it's gotten them in trouble. The fact that they had to pivot so damn hard, they were set on doing Rock and Roman, and Rock took the credit for the pivot, and that's not really, I think, how it went down. I think they had no other choice to do that, because we were about to scorched earth WWE again if Cody didn't win that belt. If the Rock and Roman was what was main event in WrestleMania 40.
Chance to win the belt, and that was what we were worried about. Is that Cody wasn't even going to have the chance because The Rock was going to insert himself, and he thought he was going to get cheered for it.
Yes, and he thought that everyone would just accept it, like, oh no, you're The Rock. Go ahead, you can have it. We don't care about anyone but The Rock, because keep in mind, Skylar, the last 5 or 6 times The Rock has shown up was under the Vince administration, where literally nobody was over, and The Rock could do that and nobody cared. That's the thing, is that The Rock got sold on this, and really the past 10 years this has been what The Rock has given WWE. He comes in whenever he wants, does whatever he wants, and everyone just has to sit there and accept it, which is why the feuds with John Cena happened, and you know, the stuff that Punk and The Rock said to each other and all that stuff that happened then. The Rock had that attitude then, and people just overlooked it. And The Rock has tried to do that this time as head of the board of directors, or he's on the board of directors. But the flip side is people are a lot less willing to let him have the benefit of the doubt like they used to.
Every single day that Pipe Bomb promo ages, it ages better and better.
Yeah.
Because what did CM Punk say in that promo? John Cena, you're almost as good an ass kicker as
Dwayne.
You're a better ass kisser than Hulk Hogan. I don't know if you're good as Dwayne. He's pretty good. Always has been and still is.
Well, and now he's the ultimate ass kisser, gets to call the shots.
Implying that The Rock is the best ass kisser of them all.
Yeah. Well, and now the ass kisser gets to call the shots. And truth be told, it's no more prominent and evident, as if we could let bygones be bygones for last year because they still landed on the right decision. Right? It all's well that ends well. But now we're in a position where The Rock came and just threw himself into this sell your soul thing with Cody and was just abjectly rejected for it, which is smart because Cody shouldn't be turning heel right now. You know, everyone's going gaga over Cody. And so the second choice ultimately, amazingly, ended up being Cena, which has done record business, but now this Cena and Cody feud isn't even involving The Rock anymore. It's like he came to insert himself, go, I'm important, and do what he always does, leave. And it's getting in the way of shit.
Again, my problem with The Rock is that when he's here, it's great, but when he's not here, it's terrible, but we still have to imply everything around it. Because, yes, John Cena versus Cody Rhodes is a money match, and it's going to main event night 2, and that's great and all. But unfortunately, it's not the money match, because the money match is Cody Rhodes versus The Rock.
Right.
John Cena is just the proxy.
Well, I don't know. That might change now, because I still believe that John Cena's winning this belt. I do.
And maybe he will, and then Cody Rhodes will get the belt back from him, or somebody else can get the belt from John and make a star out of that. And maybe that will be great and all. But the thing that's happened now is that John Cena is the proxy for The Rock because The Rock refuses to show up. As much as we have joked about John Cena not showing up for his retirement tour, he's been here more than The Rock has.
And has honestly crushed it. I've loved the promos that he's been giving. It's stuff that John has wanted to do, I'm sure, for years and years and years, and it is doing a stupid amount of business for the WWE. But that being said, for something that was framed entirely around being a sellout of The Rock, we still don't know why John Cena sold out to The Rock. And we are
right. And the thing is that, like, we don't necessarily need The Rock to be there. I mean, the explanation that John Cena gave, which is he's tired of the fans always making fun of him and always treating him badly, despite the fact that he broke his ass off for WWE and for them, is great. But it doesn't give for why John Cena chose specifically to work for Dwayne. Or is it just an opportunity and a happenstance thing?
Yeah, or why Holly, it's just... It's if you're going to do this, either don't inject The Rock into it at all and have Cena turn heel on Cody some way that allows this feud to happen anyway, or have The Rock be more involved. Like, it's just you have to have this because it's still the feud, like you said, the feud is still Cody and The Rock. It's and now with the whole Travis
John Cena
Scott
being
thing,
the middleman and the proxy.
Yeah, and I think that John is doing a great job of getting people invested in this feud, especially with the back and forth that the two have had. But they have literally mentioned The Rock once in 3 weeks since Elimination Chamber, which goes to show doing WrestleMania late like this, I'm not a big fan of. They should have had the show this weekend. I think they could have sped
this up.
This
weekend or the second weekend, not the 3rd of April.
Yeah, they should have sped this up a little bit because I think then that's part of the problem is that they've got all of this time to build this feud and the key person involved is not there because he doesn't want to be there. And
it's very clear that WrestleMania has been losing steam because feuds like Gunther and Jey Uso are losing the magic that they had at least a couple weeks ago. Same thing with Charlotte and Tiffany. Seth Rollins, Punk, and Roman Reigns has been good, but that one is also one where they're starting to lose a little bit of the steam until the whole Paul Heyman thing. They need to. This is why WrestleMania should either be the 1st or 2nd weekend of April, not the 3rd or 4th.
Well, and that's kind of what my thought is what else are they going to say to each other in the next 3 weeks? It kind of seems like they've covered all the ground there is to cover to the point where Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton are just saying that their husbands are in the DMs, and all that goobah. And,
I mean, Cody Rhodes just crossroad John Cena. What else is there for Cody to do?
Well, Cena's got to get some heat back before this matchup, I think. And so the thing is, though, it's just a scheduling thing for me, and they've really tried to draw this out and rely on the fact that these international crowds will cheer for whatever, knowing that they're drawing this out a lot. And I'm not blaming them for a long build, right? It's just there are some things about WWE. It's not stuff we've dealt with Vince. It's just new irks that are not really problems, but they could lead to maybe necessarily not having the greatest time. There's going to be fluctuations in the success. I don't think it's going to be just a skyrocket upward like they've been doing it. As far as the booking is concerned, there will be some plateaus here and there, but it's
but at least Triple H and team are willing to admit that if a show isn't good or they have a bad stretch shows, they're going to try and do better. Versus Tony Khan, who says everything is great, it's wonderful, it's fantastic, it's wonderful. Ain't you right, Tony Schiavone? Yeah, that's a good call, Tony.
That's a good call. Yeah, and that kind of brings us.
But again, I think that The Rock can be either one of their best resources or their biggest hindrance, depending on his fucking ego.
Yeah, which unfortunately is at astronomical levels right now. And, and that's the difficult thing is what's it going to take to humble The Rock? And I know it ain't going to happen from WWE because WWE is kind of his safe word. He could go there and do whatever, and that's, even if his movies bomb, he could still go to WWE and do his things just to pat himself a little bit. But there's going to come a point where the fans are going to go, no, we don't want to keep doing this anymore. Either be here or don't be here, and this in-between shit ain't going to work for me, brother. And he'll see pretty soon. But this leads us to kind of the final little piece of this whole discussion. Looking at the state of wrestling as a whole, and particularly because WWE is the biggest proprietor of it, where do you see WWE being in the next 5 years, and how it pertains to its mainstream appeal, as it has become more mainstream now than it maybe ever has been, and its overall influence on how wrestling looks and behaves going forward?
I think WWE will continue to lean into trying to be an entertainment company with sports involved. As they try and get more mainstream, they get stars like Travis Scott or other people involved like Logan Paul, and they try to diversify their stuff. I mean, we're not very far away from Travis Scott versus Bad Bunny. Let's be honest.
You're not wrong. I really hope we don't ever get that, but you're not wrong.
But again, it's not for me, but it's for other people. And that's the thing that WWE is trying to do, is to book a show that has a little bit of something for everybody. You got stuff for the old school wrestling fans. You got stuff for the people that like tag teams. You got the stuff that people like for women. You have their mainstream people. And then you got the stuff that brings it all together, which is usually going to be in the main event.
Which is the
They
stars.
have the stuff. Yeah. They have the stuff that they're going to bring up. Now, WWE will probably experience hiccups and bumps, as they always will, but I see them being a well-oiled company so long as Triple H's leadership takes them to the right places. Now, Sean, here's a question I have for you.
Please.
Because this is a question I know you and Joshua did not cover, but it's something that we need to start thinking about when it comes to WWE in the next 5 to 10 years.
Go for it.
Who takes over after Triple H?
Huh. Well.
And the other thing, too, is, for that matter, we'll throw in Shawn Michaels, too. Who throws in for Shawn Michaels? Because remember, Triple H has a pacemaker. He's 55 years old and almost died because of a heart attack. I see Triple H as a person who may run WWE for a while, but I don't think he's going to run it forever.
Well, I think to some degree, what his position is right now is getting wrestling into a state where he can find somebody to be an heir apparent while the ship is stable. You know, you couldn't really do that in the first couple of years when it was just like, all right, let's just patch up the holes at the bottom of the ship because this big ass ship has been taking on water for some time. You know, stop the bleeding. That number one, stop the bleeding, and then let's go into that. Now, I don't have a good name to give you here.
Well, can I give you two names?
Please?
Because I think it's very clear after Shawn Michaels leaves NXT whenever he wants to, it's CM Punk. Because nobody else wanted to teach more than CM Punk, and I think he will jump at the opportunity.
I would love that. I would love if CM Punk ultimately became the face of NXT, and I'm sure he would put on a damn good product too. He's got a great mind for the business.
I mean, look at what he's done with people like Roxanne Perez, Cora Jade. I know that he was a big influence on both Braun Breaker and Oba Femi. I think CM Punk would do wonders as the head trainer of NXT, and he's already expressed interest in doing it. And they've actually already said he's got a job as a coach when he decides to retire.
Well, I'd love that. That would bring me hope. I'd enjoy that very much.
As for Triple H, I mean, we've kind of already said his name, but given the fact that Cody Rhodes wanted to run AEW like a wrestling company and he didn't get the chance because Tony Khan was involved, I feel like they're setting up Cody Rhodes to eventually take over whenever Triple H decides to step away.
Well, I'll tell you, man. I will say that would be the funniest full circle arc I could possibly think of if Cody Rhodes truly does follow in the footsteps of his father and books the WWE, and we'll see how he does. You know,
and the biggest fuck you to AEW and Tony Khan specifically, in that two of your biggest stars are running WWE, and I can easily see that happen.
Well, I also wouldn't be surprised if we see some people who you wouldn't necessarily expect to be working behind the scenes. Like, I could definitely see somebody like Seth or Becky Lynch being very prominently, not necessarily in charge of everything, but having some level of influence in the back at that time. I think there's, considering the good faith that they're bringing in, I think the wrestling talent turned executives have a bright future. It's just who wants to do it, who's, what's their incentive going to be. And there's always going to be those people who didn't quite make it at a top level, who still will be incredible as agents and as, people in the back. We hear about that all the time. The Norman Smileys of the WWE, the Matt Blooms,
the Jason Jordans.
Exactly. The Tyson Kids.
Like Tyson Kidd. I know Pete Dunne is already working as a producer. I've also heard Chad Gable is doing things behind the scenes. Guys like that are definitely going to be the coaches and producers. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to have a Rhodes run WWE.
Well, and it's going to be very interesting to see.
Vince McMahon, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, you know what? I echo those sentiments very much so. And it makes me feel good about where pro wrestling is headed. The fact that we can look at that with a level of positivity that, they're getting things right. They're getting things right. And it's a good feeling to have. But it'll be interesting to see how they pull it all off come Las Vegas, which is the next time that we are going to see you, the fine folks of the Court-Martail podcast, as Skylar and myself and Josh again break down both night 1 and night 2 of WrestleMania 41. Skylar, thank you so much for engaging in this State of Wrestling two-parter, as we have gotten some wonderful new insights into what wrestling looks like and where it's headed with you here in the co-host chair once again.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the journey of WrestleMania. Well, sorry, I look forward to WrestleMania, not the journey itself. Let's just get there already.
Well, it is certainly a long journey, but certainly things that are long are the commercial breaks in between matches sometimes. And speaking of commercial breaks, we have to take one ourselves. Thank you all for tuning into the podcast. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of the things. Who do you think's winning at WrestleMania? Let us know down below. We will be right back right after this.